Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation, The Heritage Breads, Rural Food Tradition, Heritage Making and Community Building on Kihnu Island, Estonia. First of all, let me give you some introductions. My name is Siyun Wu. I'm from the city Foshan in China. I finished my bachelor's study at Beijing Foreign Study University. It is during that time I started to know about the country Estonia. Later on, I got my master degree specialized on critical heritage study of Asia and Europe at Leiden University. Now I'm doing my PhD with a project on heritage in Estonia. So starting from May, I started my visits at the university and my field work in the country. For my connections with the Kihnu Island, it is from my PhD project that I had my first visit to the island in the summer of 2018. And currently, I'm back again to do field work and learn about music, cultural heritage, and everyday life on the island. Locating in the south of Estonia and facing the Gulf of Riga, Kihnu is home to a community of about 400 residents that live here year-round. The island has long-lasting traditions developed from their historical lifestyle of men going out to the sea, sailing, fishing, and hunting seal, while women farming and maintaining household on the land. With its unique culture, communal lifestyle, local dialect, music, and traditions in different forms, Kihnu Cultural Space was inscribed on the UNESCO representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2008. Nowadays, while the local Kihnu people are striving to carry on their life with their heritage, the tranquil and colorful island is also attracting visitors not only from different regions of Estonia, but also all around the world. To start with, I would like to tell you a story about my own experience on the island in 2018. "I'm so sorry, but we are out of bread," said Mrs. Matas, the head of Kihnu Cultural Space Foundations, an organization founded for preservation and development of the cultural heritage of the island and run completely by local Kihnu people. Kihnu is a small island, but even so, as in a European country where people can conveniently get food from supply chains that are well distributed countrywide and operated days and nights, it sounds unreal that one can come across a food shortage, particularly of bread, one of the most staple foods in Estonia. But it happens on this World Heritage Island. It was the last stage of Kihnu Heritage Day and knitting workshop. More than 20 participants, including some Estonian descendants living abroad, and me, a Chinese student, were all packed at the Mesama House Cultural and prepared to be picked up to the harbor. Male, for the first time throughout the event, didn't show up as scheduled. People started to murmur to each other's ear, and just when the usually quiet Estonian started to prompt loudly, Male ran into the room. She started to apologize immediately, completely forgot about sorting her traditional Kihnu red dress from the pouring rain and rushing runs in the muddy ground, which she carefully wears almost every day. With great regret, she informed people that the ferry was broken from a storm last night, so they will have to wait here, and that people could not serve food on time because without the supply they expected the ferry to bring along from the mainland. Leaving the full room of a visitor not knowing what to do, Male rushed back into the rain and the rain again. About half an hour later, people start to ease their way with this typical Estonian situation from the unpredictable weather and to wait more relaxingly, chatting and sharing warm tea and coffee and leftover snacks with each other. Mala came again, with a relieving and bright smile on her red cheeks this time. Then something completely out of everybody's expectations happened again. There was food, and it was a whole collection of what can be equivalent to a normal everyday breakfast. Fresh vegetable, cheese, butter, egg, ham, sorts of bread spreads, and salad. Although hungry like all the others and couldn't think of anything but grabbing the food, I couldn't help but notice, except for some packaged ham and cheese, everything was freshly made. Egg salad, tuna salad, and among all, the bread. Laid evenly on the plate, there was the Kihnu Life, in brown color and with a black burned edge. So, why the bread? And what is so special about this plate of Kihnu Life that I start this paper with the bread crisis on the island with? Why what we eat, how we eat, and how we feel about it can be the mirror of the self. These questions also reflect how we perceive ourselves in relation to the others and to the society. Food practice and food consumption could serve as experience of culture and different cultural boundaries in behind. Perhaps people would find that Estonian people would find it could have been more natural to have label on their tables. But for me, although have been living in the Netherlands for a few years and getting familiar with bread, label is one of the very first things I found different when I came to Estonia. The black skin label made with rye flour is dense in texture and have a strong and distinguished earthy taste. Label with the dark color, the soil-like appearances, and slightly burnt smell, the rich texture and flavor of it is a marker for me as an anthropologist originally from China to notice the other. Eating label is indeed essential for my survival in Estonia to live without a rice cooker. But more than food as merely a substantial need, is from this starter that I start to taste, to experience and to learn about Estonian people, their life, their heritage, their cultural and social worlds. Moreover, after living with some Estonian, I start to find out that although bread is simple and common, Estonians do love their label, like the affection and attachment Chinese people have towards different types of rice bowls and dishes to eat rice with. I can find rich variety of label even just in common supermarket. I also see that Estonians eating label in many different ways, with salty butter or fresh berry jams, with fish or meat, going with soup or in meal, and even baking it in slices, beer snacks, or smashing it to make dessert. The lava soup is a simple yet very delicious example. Symbolic meanings could be attached to certain food, drinks, and eating habits. Label is getting to be seen as a national bread, a dietary staple, and cultural identifier for Estonian people. Learning how to appreciate the taste of label, then, is a crucial process to understand fuller and deeper on what it means to eat, to live, and to be Estonian. And more concretely, as I find out later when I come back to Kihnu, it is a process, an important process for the understanding of why the Kihnu label is special, why it can be recognized by Kihnu people themselves and other Estonians as Estonian heritage, and the loaf of bread is connected to a bigger picture of how Kihnu people are preserving and developing their cultural heritage and community life as a whole. Getting into the Kihnu Life, many people from the mainland of Estonia have told me Kihnu people and life here are different. Yes, even for Estonians. Although getting to open up to visitors nowadays and being able to get most food products shipped from the mainland, Kihnu was strictly visited to assess for people from outside during the Soviet time. And it wasn't as easy to transport to as today until 4 years ago that they have the big ferry that allows a vehicle on board. Life here has a picture-cute landscape, timeless peace, tranquil neighborhood, skillful, kind and trustworthy people that many people enjoy and dream for. But there are also a lot of the hardships, particularly during the long, cold, dark winter. The bread crisis is an episode. Unpredictable circumstances, extreme weather, limitations to living material for even the most substantial bread can happen at any time here. Kihnu people, however, develop their wisdom, skills, and strong identity, and keep their lifestyle also from facing such relatively isolated and hard life. For years, generations of Kihnu people learn and keep their skills to manage life on their own hands, finding, growing, and making their own food, building and mending their own houses and cottages, and so on. Don't know how to make bread myself, I started to search around the island. Before the summer holidays time started and the tourist season arrived on the island, I was amazed at how little bread I can find in the 2 grocery stores on the island. I realized later, it's partly because people still prefer baking their own bread at home. And, very Estonianly, the most typical bread they like here is the laib. Some families still carry on the practice from cultivating their own plot, sowing and growing the rye, harvesting and drying the grain, grinding it into flour, and finally women, like in the old times, bake warm and tasty bread. Although generally all the homemade dark rye breads are being called Kihnu Life nowadays, because each family bake their own ones, sometimes from electronic oven and sometimes from the older wooden ovens. The laib can be different from each family and even every time when the same family bake their laib. After learning from several locals, I get to know that there are 2 basic kinds of rye laib on the island. Rugi laib for daily consumptions and another more exquisite version called Rugi Buli laib, which is made with better rye flour, sugar, and cumin or caraway. Traditionally, that is for festival and special occasions. The baking of Rugi laib takes 2 days, while Rugi Buli laib needs 3. A long time is given for the flour setting, sometimes 10 to 12 hours, and the bread is often left in the oven overnight. This gives the Kihnu Life its very dark smoke skin and the very special light sweet and sour taste. The laib can stay fresh for about 1 week, sometimes like how Rosy Light Dalut make their rewarded Kihnu Life. People add some potato to help keep the bread fresh or even longer. Sometimes people also add some small pieces of fatty pork or Baltic herring, which local fishermen can catch around the island almost the whole year round. It's true that Kihnu Life is not very appealing at the first look. It's simple and heavy like a badly burned brick block. It's not even that easy to slice. The surface of the bread loaf is usually quite hard, like a turtle shell, and the purely rye made inside is much thicker and tighter than the commercial rye bread, which often incorporate wheat flour in the mixture. Yet, once you slide out a fresh piece of Kihnu Life and hold it in your hand, the hard edge will become a crispy crust. The softness and warmth retained inside the loaf will gently spill out, and the fragrance of the bread hinting a smile of the grain and the wood will spread out subtly. Local people like enjoying the bread with slightly salted Baltic garlic on top, or with soup or alongside the main dish. But simplicity makes the best. The dense and tenacious textures of Kihnu Life might go best in the way favored by most locals. Just a tap of salty butter spread on a warm, small, soft, and rich slice. When the butter and the bread melt together in my bite, it tastes like a piece of cloud on the blue sky, with the breeze from the sea and the golden grain from the black soil of Kihnu, as a whole becoming a duet on my tongue. It's the light and enriching taste going in one, like the light letting free and down-to-earth Kihnu Icelander. As Lorenzo Smith states in her clam book Use of Heritage, there's really no such thing as heritage. In the quickly expanding field of critical heritage studies, scholars are sharing an understanding that heritage is not merely a passive conservation or preservation of the past, but a cultural construct, a social process that reflects chains of connectivity, sets of values, dynamic power relations, and expectations of the future in the present. With more time spending on the island, I increasingly see that heritage in Kihnu, or even Kihnu as a whole being a heritage space, instead of being heritage by itself, it is becoming heritage. Leiden Lake is a very good example. There's no such thing as traditional Kihnu Lake nor Estonian heritage bread. Kihnu people have been making their dark bread from generations to generations, with material they farm and skills they develop, under the limited access to sufficient supply of commercial bread. Making the lake in such ways has continuously been a part of people's everyday life on the island. The Kihnu Life have been becoming traditional and becoming Estonian heritage as a metacultural production. On the island, the Kihnu Life is usually just one kind of the normal bread Kihnu people make and have on the table. It becomes traditional Estonian dark bread when mainland Estonians come from the city, who shares the memory of homemade breads, but mainly eat commercial late from the supermarket now, see and smell the bread and recognize it as something really good, as something we used to have but rarely anymore today. It becomes heritage when foreign visitors from all around the world to see this island, me included, ask what kind of bread this is. It becomes heritage when it is produced for sale and goes into the package with a name tag of traditional Kihnu Life. Under the island's encounter with people from the mainland abroad, with the multi-layered global heritage regime, and with different culture, values, and interests, Kihnu as heritage, including the Kihnu Life, as well as many other aspects on the island, is constructed. And this social process of heritage making is still carrying on actively, with not only the interest from virus visitors and from the more dominant top-down institutional approach on heritage preservation, but very preciously from the strong spirits and hard efforts of Kihnu local community. Before ending my presentations, allow me to go back to the bright bread cresses and the plates of Kihnu Life that triggered me to come back. Still standing vividly in my memory, when I looked closer on the plate and got the bread on my hand, I noticed and felt that these were different bread. Some slices were browner, some with more burnt, some still warm and softer. Some were with little sticky pieces. I was told later, Ma let her call and asked different local households if they had some spare bread or if they had some time to make something. It was a joint effort of the community that there were breads and breakfast that day. Through the lens of Kihnu bread, I see a very close connection between the making and keeping of Kihnu heritage and the strong sense of community spirits of Kihnu people. There are two main households making Kihnu bread regularly for sale on the island. But besides from their own family shops, people can also find and buy their bread in the local museum, restaurant, or even other shops that are selling commercial breads from the mainland. Despite the slightly different ways of making the bread, people recognize each other's properly made bread as the traditional Kihnu Life. And when there are guests wanting more Kihnu Life or time of shortage similar to the bread crisis comes, people will help, including those who don't make traditional Life so regularly or for sale. In a sense, the making and preservation of Kihnu Life as local heritage is driven by the strong community spirit, while at the same time, this preservation of Kihnu Life also further strengthens the solidarity of the local community. Tasting more carefully of the Kihnu Life, there are the strengths and the sweetness from the Kihnu grain, the traditional skill of baking bread, and perhaps more exquisitely, one can taste something more special. Kihnu, which is Kihnu people's strong wishes and joint efforts of keeping their heritage and culture alive. Here I send you my best greeting from Kihnu Island and thank you all for watching.